The night of March 21, 2010, seemed like any other in the Gebara Farah household in Mexico. The parents tucked their two young daughters into bed, unaware that it would be the last time they'd see 4-year-old Paulette alive. By the next morning, Paulette had vanished without a trace from her very own bedroom. Her disappearance would captivate a nation and expose a mystery far more complex and disturbing than anyone could have imagined. When the family's nanny, Erica, went to wake little Paulette on that fateful morning, she was shocked to find the child's bed empty. Paulette was nowhere to be found. How could a 4-year-old girl with severe physical disabilities simply disappear? News of Paulette's disappearance spread quickly. Her family put up posters everywhere and begged for help on social media. Search parties looked high and low for the missing girl. Paulette's mother even went on TV, pleading with the kidnappers to bring her daughter home safely. However, as investigators searched the home for clues, they were baffled. There were no signs of forced entry, no evidence of an intruder. It was as if Paulette had vanished into thin air. All seemed very strange. 9 days after Paulette vanished, a grim discovery shattered any remaining hope. In a twist that shocked the nation, Paulette's lifeless body was found in the most unthinkable place. Her very own bedroom, wedged in the small space between the mattress and the foot of her bed. But how could this happen? It was the same bed where Paulette's mother, Lizette, had been sleeping night after night since her daughter disappeared. The same bed where just days earlier, Lizette had given emotional interviews to the media as she pleaded for Paulette's safe return. The discovery defied all logic. In the days following Paulette's disappearance, the police had scoured every inch of the family's home, leaving no stone unturned. Highly trained sniffer dogs were brought in, their keen noses specifically attuned to find any trace of the missing girl. Paulette's room, in particular, was thoroughly searched multiple times. Yet somehow, inexplicably, Paulette's body had been there all along, hidden in plain sight. Even more baffling was the fact that Paulette's room had been a hub of activity since she vanished. Family members, friends, and relatives had been in and out, spending time in the room, even sleeping in the very same bed. Lizette herself had spent night after night lying directly on top of where her daughter's body would eventually be found. How could a child's corpse go unnoticed in such close proximity to so many people for so long? It seemed unthinkable. Perhaps most perplexing of all was the complete absence of the unmistakable, overpowering stench of decomposition. As any forensic expert will attest, the odor of a decaying human body is unlike anything else. It's a thick, cloying stench that infiltrates every corner of a space, clinging to fabrics and refusing to dissipate. But in Paulette's case, there was no smell. None at all. Not when Lizette slept on top of her daughter's body for nights on end. Not when the family gathered to grieve, sitting on the same mattress. Not even when police and their dogs searched the room over and over. The stench of death, which should have been inescapable in such a confined space, was strangely, eerily absent. All seemed very strange, but what investigators found next would turn the entire investigation on its head. In the days following Paulette's disappearance, her mother Lizette made several television appearances pleading for information about her missing daughter. In one particularly emotional interview, she held up a pair of Paulette's favorite pajamas, pink with a distinctive giraffe print, as she begged for her safe return. Fast forward to the horrific discovery of Paulette's body over a week later, and investigators were shocked to find her wearing the very same pajamas her mother had been clutching in the interview. This strange detail immediately raised suspicions. If Paulette had indeed been missing for 9 days, how could she be found in the same clothes her mother had in her possession after she vanished? To many, this suggested that Lizette knew more about her daughter's disappearance and death than she was letting on. The traveling pajamas remain one of the most compelling pieces of circumstantial evidence pointing to a cover-up. It was obvious that things were not looking good for the Gebara family. But what the police found next shocked even the most seasoned investigators. Large bloodstains were found on the sheets of the bed where Paulette was found. Some of these stains were reported to be as large as a soccer ball, suggesting a significant loss of blood. For investigators, this was an immediate sign that Paulette may have met a violent end. Adding to the suspicion, audio recordings from the scene captured investigators openly speculating that Paulette had been beaten. One voice can be heard saying they were beating up the kid. Yet despite these initial impressions, the official narrative would completely dismiss the possibility of foul play. The official autopsy report made no mention of these bloodstains or any evidence of physical trauma. Instead, it concluded that Paulette had accidentally fallen into a small space in the bed and suffocated. This conclusion seemed to fly in the face of the physical evidence at the scene. The Paulette case exposed how a family's conflicting stories can obscure the truth. But in our next mystery, it wasn't lies that concealed a child's fate. It was the overwhelming silence of nature itself. October 2nd, 1999 seemed like the perfect fall day in Colorado's Roosevelt National Forest. The aspen leaves sparkled in the crisp air. But by evening, the peace was shattered by a mystery that is still unsolved today. That morning, 3-year-old Jaryd Atadero went on a hike with a group from his dad's church. No one knew it would be the last time the happy little boy was ever seen alive. But the story of how Jaryd ended up on that fateful hike is as perplexing as the mystery of what happened to him on the trail. Jaryd's father, Alan, a divorced single dad, had recently become very involved with a local church group. That October, he hosted 11 members of the group, along with Jaryd and his 6-year-old sister Jocelyn, at the family's mountain resort for a weekend trip. When the group planned to visit a nearby fish hatchery, Jaryd and Jocelyn begged to come along. Alan wasn't sure at first, but let the kids go after the adults promised to bring them right back. But Alan didn't know the plan had changed sometime after they had left. The quick visit turned into a tough 15-mile hike, a big challenge even for skilled hikers, much less a 3-year-old. And on that trail, a series of critical decisions would be made that put Jaryd in harm's way. An hour and a half into the hike, 2 fishermen saw little Jaryd walking alone, trying to catch up with some adults ahead of him. After a short talk with the fishermen, the boy ran off to join the hikers. Sadly, this was the last time anyone saw Jaryd. But here's where things get odd. The group had split up earlier. Fast hikers way ahead and slow ones forming their own group behind them. This made it nearly impossible to keep track of Jaryd. No one is sure which group the boy was trying to catch up to when the fishermen spotted him. Even worse, the hikers the fishermen saw might not have even been with the church group entirely. This means Jaryd could have been following total strangers. Amazingly, Jaryd wasn't noticed missing until 12:15 p.m., over an hour after he was last seen. By then, the 3-year-old had vanished into the huge forest without a trace. The group panicked and rushed to tell Alan that his youngest was gone. Alan raced to the trailhead, pounding his chest and repeating the words, "They lost my baby," over and over. At the same time, the resort manager called rangers to start an intensive search. All of them certain that they'd have the toddler home by bedtime. After all, so many searches on that trail had happy endings. Why would this be any different? But as the hours ticked by, an uneasy feeling set in that this case was different. As darkness fell, Jaryd was still missing. Teams searched the woods on foot with dogs and helicopters. They expected to find the boy scared and crying, maybe asleep under a tree. Days passed with no clues at all. The search party grew to over 200 people, all determined to find Jaryd. But the mountains kept their secrets, and hopes of finding the boy alive faded with each failed hour. Finally, after 5 long days, the painful choice was made to end the search. Wherever Jaryd was, he was beyond their reach. The forest had swallowed him up, leaving only questions behind. For years, it seemed the mystery of what happened to Jaryd would never be solved. But then, a shocking discovery would reignite the case. Flash forward to June 4th, 2003. 2 hikers found scraps of kids' clothes and a tiny shoe, only 500 feet from where Jaryd was last seen. They knew right away it was his, from the missing child posters still all over the trails. 10 days later, another search found more remains. A small piece of skull and some teeth. Tests proved they belonged to the missing boy. Jaryd had finally been found, but it was horrible news. How could skilled trackers have missed the clothes the first time? And what awful thing happened to the little boy on that day? At first, Jaryd's death looked like a tragic but simple case of a lost child. But disturbing details would soon emerge that didn't quite fit that theory. The official story was simple but heartbreaking. Jaryd must have wandered off the trail and died from the cold. Lost and alone, the 3-year-old wasn't strong enough to survive the freezing mountain night. It was a tragic end, but one that seemed to explain what happened. But troubling questions still hung in the air. The spot where Jaryd's remains were found was almost impossible to get to, a steep and rocky place that would be hard even for an adult to climb. How could a toddler in heavy clothes make it up there? Something didn't add up. Some experts guessed Jaryd might have been attacked by a mountain lion and carried away from the trail. This idea sounded more likely when hikers, including Jaryd's sister, said they heard a child scream when the boy went missing. A lion could explain how Jaryd ended up in such a remote spot. But the state of Jaryd's clothes would tell a different story and raise the specter of an evil far worse than any wild animal. Despite winters of harsh weather, Jaryd's little clothes were in shockingly good shape when found. Even weirder, his pants had been turned inside out. How could a mountain lion possibly do that? What's more odd, no blood, animal fur, or DNA was found on the clothes. The clues just didn't line up. The case that confused even the best search teams now had top detectives scratching their heads. With no clear answers, a chilling new idea took shape, one almost too awful to consider. What if Jaryd was taken by a kidnapper? Could the killer have put the body there later, trying to make it look like an accident or animal attack? If so, he outsmarted one of the biggest searches ever and is still out there somewhere. It's a thought that sends shivers down the spine. The forest may have kept its secrets about Jaryd, but this next story ventures into a world where nothing is what it seems. Where a missing child can return but still be missing at the same time. On March the 10th, 1928, 9-year-old Walter Collins disappeared on his way to the movies. No one could have predicted the baffling mystery that would follow. A tragic tale of a mother's desperate search for answers, shocking twists, and the haunting shadow of a real-life boogeyman. This is the story of one of Los Angeles' most enduring unsolved cases. The vanishing of Walter Collins. Walter Collins, a quiet, well-behaved boy, lived with his single mother, Christine, a hard-working telephone operator. On the morning of March 10, 1928, Walter convinced his mother to let him go to the movies alone. Christine, preoccupied with getting ready for work, hesitantly agreed. She could never have imagined it would be the last time she'd see her son. As night fell and Walter failed to return home, Christine grew more and more worried. She feared something terrible had happened. After 5 days with no sign of Walter, she filed a missing persons report with the police. The police investigation uncovered strange leads. Witnesses reported seeing a boy matching Walter's description as far away as Oakland. but concrete evidence of Walter's whereabouts remained elusive. Months dragged on without any real progress. The trail had gone cold. Then, out of the blue, a major break in the case would turn the investigation on its head. In August 1928, after 5 months of desperate searching, police in Illinois found a boy matching Walter's description. He claimed to be the missing Walter Collins. Christine dared to hope her prayers had been answered. She paid to have the boy brought to Los Angeles, eager to be reunited with her son. At first, Christine welcomed the boy with open arms. But as time passed, doubts crept in. The boy was shorter than Walter. His dental records didn't match. Even the family dog seemed to sense something wasn't right, growling at the boy as if he was a stranger. Christine brought her concerns to the police, but Captain J.J. Jones dismissed her claims. He gave her a shocking ultimatum: either take this boy home as her son, or he would be sent to an orphanage. Christine faced an impossible choice. She couldn't shake the feeling that this boy was not her Walter. But how far would she go to prove it? Christine was certain the boy claiming to be Walter was an imposter. She shared her doubts with Captain Jones, pleading with him to keep searching for her real son. In a stunning act of corruption, Captain Jones accused Christine of being an unfit mother. He claimed she was delusional and belonged in a psychiatric ward. Christine's worst fears came true when she was forcibly institutionalized at the LA County General Hospital's psychiatric ward. Alone, betrayed, and now confined against her will, Christine was at her lowest point. The LAPD had failed her. Her son was still missing, and a strange boy had taken Walter's place, making it even harder to find the real Walter Collins. Christine had lost all hope of ever learning the truth. Little did she know, the case was about to take a shocking turn. As Christine languished in the psychiatric hospital, the police and public started asking hard questions about the Collins case. The boy claiming to be Walter had been living with Christine for 3 weeks. Why had she waited so long to voice her doubts? Under intense scrutiny, the boy finally confessed. He admitted to Captain Jones that he was not Walter Collins, but 12-year-old Arthur Hutchins, a runaway from Iowa. He had hatched a scheme to impersonate Walter in hopes of going to Hollywood and meeting his favorite Western film star. The revelation sparked a media circus. Christine was released from the hospital, her sanity proven. But valuable time had been lost. The LAPD's reputation was left in tatters. But most importantly, the real Walter Collins was still missing. Sadly, the truth about Walter's fate would soon come to light in the most horrible way imaginable. In fall of 1928, a new lead in the Collins case led police to a remote chicken ranch in Wineville, California. And what they uncovered was straight out of a horror story. The ranch belonged to Gordon Stewart Northcott, a 21-year-old who had been kidnapping, molesting, and murdering young boys with the help of his mother. Scattered around the property were the grim remains of Northcott's victims: blood-soaked earth, bits of clothing, and personal items. Among the chilling discoveries was an item belonging to Walter Collins, a Boy Scout knife engraved with his name. The knife was the most compelling evidence that Walter had been one of Northcott's victims. Northcott was arrested, tried, and executed for his crimes in what became known as the Wineville Chicken Coop murders. He left behind only vague, contradictory hints about what really happened to Walter Collins. Christine Collins never learned the definitive fate of her son. She passed away in 1964, forever haunted by his disappearance. The question still lingers: did Walter Collins perish at that desert house of horrors, or did he somehow escape to start a new life somewhere else? Officially, his case remains open to this day. His body was never found.